Okey, baik, bertemu kembali dalam Niaga Awani siaran khas kami bawakan dari Pusat Konvensyen Kuala Lumpur bersempena dengan mesyuarat Menteri-Menteri Kewangan ASEAN dan Gubernur Bank Pusat ASEAN serta persidangan pelaburan ASEAN AIC 2025. Banyak sebenarnya kalau kita perincikan, Najib, tadi baru sahaja selesai ministerial dialog ataupun mesyuarat ataupun dialog di peringkat menteri. Banyak yang dibincangkan, idea-idea dan juga bagaimana sebenarnya nak mendepani gelora ekonomi yang berlaku ketika ini, Najib.
Ya, dia juga membincangkan tentang soal realiti ASEAN pada ketika ini.
Betul.
Bagaimana kekuatan yang kita miliki dari sudut pandang ekonomi tersebut, selain daripada populasi kita yang besar, dan juga bagaimana keutuhan ekonomi yang kita miliki, kebersamaan ini harus dijadikan titik punca untuk kita bergerak ke hadapan. Itu pertama. Dalam kita mendepani cabaran ekonomi global, gelombang ekonomi global seperti hari sebutkan tadi, seperti perang tarif dan sebagainya, inilah menjadi kekuatan kita. Namun kebersamaan itu dalam perbezaan latar ekonomi itu menjadi cabaran kita untuk kita berunding di sini. Itu persoalan besar yang kita tinggalkan. Bukan kali pertama untuk kita bincangkan soal itu. Sudah kita bincangkan pelbagai topik sebegini setiap kali ASEAN bertemu. Dan ini bukan satu yang asing dalam aspek tersebut. Tetapi bagaimana untuk kita melihat dalam konteks Donald Trump selaku Presiden Amerika Syarikat, dalam konteks negara-negara harus memilih mungkin ally mereka ataupun mencari titik keseimbangan lebih tepat lagi supaya mereka tidak terperangkap dalam permainan tersebut. Itu juga menjadi persoalan besar yang kita harus lihat dalam perkara tersebut, dan itu juga yang disentuh dalam konteks ataupun dialog sebentar tadi.
Dan Najib, kalau kita perincikan dalam perbincangan bersama dengan Amir sebentar tadi juga, kita melihat bahawa sebenarnya cabaran dalam, kita tidak boleh menafikan isu tradisional lah, Najib, kerana permasalahan di peringkat ASEAN ini masih lagi ketara. Isu Laut Cina Selatannya masih lagi ada, isu Rohingya masih lagi ada, banyak perkara-perkara yang perlu ditelitikan. Tetapi apa yang berlaku ataupun diumumkan oleh Donald Trump itu sebenarnya menjadi fokus dan juga titik tumpuan global ketika ini, termasuklah di KLCC ini. Okey, jadi sudah tentu kita tidak berdua saja, kita nak meneliti dari sisi ekonomi pada ketika ini, Najib, bagaimana impaknya, bagaimana ASEAN perlu bersedia menghadapi gelora ini. Okay, so I would like to welcome Barnabas Gan, Chief Economist of RHB Group. Barnabas, thank you so much for being with us today. First of all, maybe you can comment on the tariff announced by Donald Trump and how ASEAN should face this so-called turmoil, economic turmoil right now.
So thanks for the question. I think, but essentially we have to understand, for the fact that ASEAN as a region, so ASEAN as a region has to remain, cohesive as well as integrated to mitigate the tariff. I think what we have to understand is that probably ASEAN as a region will be negatively impacted, given that tariffs have been broad-based. But I think essentially what we do see is that ASEAN still remains to be a very highly relevant, region, and that basically means that we have to stay connected and stay cohesive in order, to sail through this rocky waters. I think if we just create an analogy, for the fact that ASEAN is like a sturdy ship, but in rocky waters, so that basically suggests, that we have to stay together, but we will have to see downside bias for growth across the region.
Unified ASEAN is very crucial and important in facing difficulties and also challenges around the globe, not just between G2G but also businesses around ASEAN. But how do you see, are we on the right track in terms of getting all our businesses on the same page in facing difficulties and global challenges currently?
I think that's a very good question. ASEAN as a region has gone through many decades of efforts to integrate, efforts to cooperate, and as well as to make sure that we are on the same page. There is still remains to be room for further integration, that's for sure. But I think perhaps we have gone a very long way to making sure that we have placed ourselves on the world map in allowing investors to know that, look, we are one region, we are one bloc. We will stand united to make sure that we sing on the same page and making sure that we will mitigate this tariff risk together. So I think this is important. It's an important message for investors around the world, that we are all in this together, and we will fall together, we will rise together.
Barnabas, if we recap back, AMRO targeted that last January, ASEAN Plus 3 economy GDP this year would be like around between 4.2. your thoughts with this current situation, how ASEAN, especially with ASEAN Plus 3, for example, there's going to be a downgrade, of course. Maybe your target and also sectors that need to be worried of.
Sure. So I think across ASEAN, maybe we start off with Malaysia. We are in the midst of looking at the forecast, but perhaps there may be some downside bias to our 5% growth target, maybe towards 4.5%. It still remains to be a highly resilient growth, because we have to understand, that as a region, or Malaysia in particular, Malaysia as a economy has done very well in 2024, over 5%. And that is the fact. That is the fundamental, that is the steady ship that I'm referring to. The noise perhaps is tariff, the noise is the speculation in the equity markets that is causing the downside bias, in investor confidence. But that's just noise. With the steady ship, with the strong fundamentals that we are seeing in Malaysia, a 4.5% print still remains to be quite relevant, at this current stage. Across ASEAN, we are also looking at other downgrades. Maybe Singapore at about 2.5%, for Thailand about 2.3%, Indonesia at 4.5%. But that is the point. The point is that even though there are downgrades in the ASEAN region, it is still very far away from a recession print. And that's important for everybody to know.
Let's talk about your favorite topic, because we expect the Fed to cut rates by the end of the year. We don't know yet in terms of the numbers, but that one is before Trump announced on the tariff. Now that we have tariff in place and the factor being priced in by the Fed itself, and we don't know the numbers, how huge the numbers will be cut by the Fed. But how will it impact the OPR determination in Malaysia and also in the region as well? But what are some of the considerations the monetary policies or the Bank Negara would consider in determining OPR rate moving forward?
Thank you. Just let me correct that. My favorite topic is not the. it's not the Fed. Okay. My favorite topic is Malaysia and how it will continue to stay strong in this year. No, but perhaps to answer your question, I think what's important is that the Fed, given the slowdown in the US, probably towards 1.5 or 1% for this year, there will be negative downside bias for the job markets. And with the Fed's dual mandate of the maximum employment being under threat at this juncture, then perhaps further downside bias for rates cuts will occur. So we are still looking for 3 rate cuts by the FOMC, and this means that perhaps there may be a slew of rate cuts across ASEAN as well. Base case for Malaysia still remains to be at 3% for the BNM OPR. Right. But however, and a very strong caveat is that if growth does decline below the official range forecast of 4.5 to 5.5, then perhaps that may spur the central bank to inject some monetary support to help the economy's growth in 2025.
ASEAN, I would like to bring our discussion into ASEAN context, especially when we look at the different types of economy, size of economy in ASEAN. Like Singapore, and also we have like Vietnam that have, tariff like 46-47%, and then but Singapore 10%. Do you optimistic that among the 10 countries of ASEAN can have a consensus, especially in terms of how to navigate, and also in order to make sure that we are ready, ASEAN is ready to face the tariff by Trump, in terms of, especially on negotiation with US, yeah.
For sure. Very importantly, and I think the viewers must know this, that our biggest trading partner in Malaysia and in ASEAN remains to be intra-region. We trade the most within ASEAN. Most of our trade is within ASEAN, and that basically means that despite the tariff that has been placed by US into ASEAN, the ASEAN trade might still remain unimpacted, given that we still have a relatively high level of free trade and very low barriers of trade within the region itself. And that basically means that as a region, we will continue to stay resilient, because most of our demand, most of our connectivity has been within ASEAN itself. And that basically perhaps will be the saving grace for ASEAN, given that we are a very huge size, we are 10 countries, and most importantly as well, we are all in the same boat, we share the same message that we, in the future, the time is now to make sure that there will be greater integration, greater connectivity, and greater greater burst for sustainability into the coming year.
Yeah, with the shift in supply chains or supply chains disruptions caused by the uncertainty and also geopolitical tension, I would say. But you see that ASEAN is using its potential to the max in terms of having ASEAN plus China, for instance, or ASEAN plus 3 or plus 6 and all that. But do you see that we are using that opportunity to move forward?
I mean, there will always be global conflict in terms of who is the global power, US or China. Russia might come into play as well. So this global, race, so to speak, or a clash of arms, might be something that may persist. Given that every country will want, or especially US and China will want, to run the race to making sure, that they are on top of the game. But the thing is that ASEAN is a very highly trade-reliant economy. We cannot afford, most importantly, to take sides. We need to stay neutral, and we need to understand the fact that we are highly dependent on global powers, global trade, to making sure that global growth as well as ASEAN growth remains to be highly relevant and highly sustainable in the future. Yeah.
Your thoughts on China plus one strategy? With this current situation, do you think that, especially on countries are looking forward to tap into China plus one strategy, if China managed to undergo this current situation, this turmoil, so-called turmoil, this tariff, how do you see the China plus one strategy will give is part of the opportunity that need to look forward by countries in this current situation?
Well, thanks for the question. I think perhaps the secret ingredient that is actually the main reason for strong evolution since the beginning of time of man is the ability to adjust, the ability to stay flexible. We do not know who the next superpower is. It may be US, it may be China, we do not know. I'm not here to speculate, but most importantly, ASEAN as a region is highly reliant on both US and China. And that basically means that we are highly diversified. And if there is going to be a slowdown in both countries, then probably the entire region will take a hit. But if we are looking at, say, are we going to stay within the China plus one strategy? Are we going to look towards the US? I think what's important to note is that we're highly diversified from the trade perspective, from the investment perspective, even tourism, we are also highly diversified. And that basically suggests that despite what happens, what may come, ASEAN as a region will remain to be highly relevant and highly flexible in making sure that we stay relevant in tomorrow's world.
Talking about diversification in our exports and trade, many suggesting that Malaysia and also ASEAN to look beyond the existing market. For instance, Malaysia, just yesterday, MITI Minister has said that we're going to focus on the Middle East, Africa, and also South America market. What are the challenges and what are the opportunities for this for us to tap on?
I think for challenges, probably it's the unknowns. And what is the unknowns? Cultural barriers, any potential trade barriers. It could also maybe be an understanding because we are in fairly uncharted waters. But I do see the very strong benefits in diversifying away, and into Africa and into the countries that you just mentioned, because it basically means that Malaysia as a region gets more trading partners, more cooperation, more source of raw materials, more source of trade, and of course a highly a very strong opportunity to cooperate with these countries itself in terms of free trade agreement, in terms of exchange of knowledge, and this is highly advised, to making sure that Malaysia remains to be highly progressive in tomorrow's world.
How about in terms of sectors? I would like to narrow down into sectors, for example, like Malaysia and Indonesia, palm oil, the biggest exporter of palm oil, maybe in context of Malaysia, rubber. How do you see in terms of sector, what kind of sectors that will be most impacted based on your analysis by the tariff of tariff?
Sure. So the three key sectors or three products that Malaysia exports: crude materials, E&E, machinery. And given that tariffs are broad-based, that basically suggests that these are the sectors that will face the brunt of the tariffs. And not owing that, say, E&E, total E&E exports by Malaysia, US actually commands, if I'm not wrong, 16% of all E&E exports. And China commands about 27% of all Malaysia's E&E exports. And that basically suggests that if there is going to be a shortfall in demand from US, given the tariffs, as well as a shortfall from Malaysia, given that they are hit by tariffs, then probably the E&E sector in Malaysia will be one of the key sectors that I will be most worried about. Yeah, so that will be the answer. Yeah.
Moving forward, currently we are facing the tariff challenges, right? This is so far the biggest in terms of ASEAN facing more challenges. But for now. But if you listen back to what Prime Minister said during his speech, he said that this is not the first time that ASEAN has faced this kind of challenges, and this certainly will not be the last ASEAN. But how do you see the strength of ASEAN being built when facing this kind of challenges and moving forward and adapting to the situation and also getting themselves ready in facing more new, maybe bigger challenges ahead?
We have gone through wars, we have gone through crisis, we have gone through COVID, we have gone through slowdown. Where are we now? We are still called ASEAN. And that's important. We have gone through trials and tribulations, and yet we still stand tall. This won't be the first, this won't be the last. And I think most importantly, in times of stress and in times of challenges, there fits and making sure that it creates even of a stronger core for ASEAN to stay highly connected and highly relevant and highly with sustainability, and manufacturing as well as tourism integration within ASEAN itself. And this just spurs the effort within the region itself to making sure that we still remain highly relevant and to stand tall in tomorrow's world.
Yeah, help us to understand a little bit about the business perspective, because whenever the tariff being announced, whenever the policy is being announced by any nation, in Malaysia particularly, but the business, they need to first understand the whole situation and react to it. I saw some of the video on TikTok, but this is the business from the US, how terrible they feel about the tariffs. They're going to close down the shops and all that. But how do you think that the businesses, especially in Malaysia and this region, react to tariffs and to all these challenges? And how do they get themselves ready and shield their business?
So there's a long and short answer to your question. Probably I will take the short answer and you can probe me further. You can probe me further. Yeah? So I think the short answer really is this. Malaysia's risk at hand, it's largely from the external front. Because it's tariffs. It is to curb the export out from Malaysia into the rest of the world, especially into the US. And what this basically means is that if we just look from the external point of view, it's going to be bad. However, if we are looking at the internal or domestic issues in Malaysia, that brings upon the fact that I've started but with this interview, whereby the fundamentals in Malaysia remain strong. And that's the key. Fundamentals are the ones that will last, not noise. The noise is tariffs. The noise is the speculation. The noise is the downside bias and risk sentiment. But the fundamentals do not change. And the fundamentals are as such. Wages are going up. Domestic expenditure, domestic consumption is actually resilient. And we are already seeing, B&M rate at 3% already at a very accommodative level. Be it whether it will cut or not is another matter. But I think what's important really is that domestic issues are strong. And that basically means that I think businesses in particular, yes, they may face some slowdown, but that we can actually hold hopes that if there's a slowdown, probably it's a region-wide, but this should not last. It may be just be a 2025 story because of the tariff measures, and if we do turn up for the better, we can rest assured that we will likely be stronger than ever before as compared to pre-tariffs.
If I can summarize your short answer.
That's the short answer.
That's the short answer.
I wonder how long this
the long answer. Okay, is it reflects that we, meaning that Malaysia, on the right track with the kerangka ekonomi madani to raise the floor, to raise the ceiling? Are we on the right track on to face this current situation with the current policies, economic policies, or we need to do some shifts, adjustment on it?
What's right and what's wrong, perhaps? Maybe that is the golden question. What's right and what's wrong? In every policy implementation, there will be upsides and downsides. But the thing is this, there are no perfect men, only perfect intentions.
Right.
Yeah.
And the intentions are good. The intentions are perfect. The intentions are for ASEAN to come together, to integrate, to have sustainability policies, and to making sure that we stay highly relevant. And that's the key. Be it whether we are going at the speed of light or are we at snail speed, but it's still progress. It's still madani. That's the key.
All right. Last advice.
Advice.
No, because we have. This is quite unprecedented in terms of understanding the challenges faced by. It's not just. In the context of ASEAN, of course, we talk about ASEAN. But how do you see 5 years down the road, ASEAN? Because, like you mentioned, we faced COVID, we faced many challenges before, and yet we are still here, still standing strong. But after tariffs, but how do you see 5 years down the road ASEAN will be in terms of adapting to these challenges? And how confident are you that we will be sort of stronger middle power in economy, in politics, in that sense?
Maybe 3 key things that I see in the next 5 years. 1, because of this crisis, because of where we are right now, we will emerge as a stronger voice at the global tables. People will see us not as Malaysia, not as Singapore, not as Indonesia. People see us as ASEAN.
Yes.
We are a voice of 10 countries. And that gives strength, that gives size in future negotiations. That's point 1. Second point that I look forward to is that investors see us as one block.
Yes.
And that is important because this creates huge opportunities. Huge, positive spillover effects when it comes to investments, trade, and expansion of businesses. The last thing that I want to see, that I hope to see in the next 5 years, if not 10 years, is that there will be a very strong spur to making sure interconnectivity, trade, knowledge, human capital, movement of labor, and that means the breakdown of barriers, the breakdown of restrictions, and the promotion of integration and positive spillover effects from all this connectivity that will make ASEAN even more relevant as compared to today. That's what I like to see.
All right.
Okay, thank you so much, Barnabas Gan, Chief Economist, RHB Group. Hopefully, I think next time we can bring Barnabas to our studio. To our studio.
We can have 1 hour discussion.
1 hour discussion with you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you so much.